Hi everyone, Jim Dubs here, call sign Castle, and today, in this video, we'll be looking at how to start up a cold and dark F-15E Strike Eagle. Before we jump into the jet, let's look at where we can get some information on how everything in the jet works. If you do a quick Google search for the DCS F-15E manual, you'll come to this page on the DCS website, where you can download the manual with all the information. Got the manual opened here in front of me. As you can see, there is pages and pages of information. But to get started quickly, what we want to look for is the checklists. And then from the checklists, we'll search for and find any information that we might find confusing in the above pages. We're looking for page 601 for our startup checklist. Here we go. As you can see, it's pretty in-depth. Half of these things you can actually skip because they're either already set or don't really apply because it's a simulator, but we'll do it anyway, just to make sure that we start up this jet properly. So here we are in the front seat of the F-15E Strike Eagle. We're going to go through the startup checklist that we found earlier in the DCS flight manual for the F-15E. Our first item is the mic switch. That's down here on the left-hand side. We're going to turn that on so that we can talk to our WIZO if we have one, or to use our radio. Next, our anti-collision light, so we can let the ground crew know that we're going to start the engine soon. It's hiding behind the throttle right here, so we'll turn that on. If you want to hide your controls, just double left click. Our next item on the list is to confirm our throttles are off, which they are. Conformal fuel tanks, we're going to set to stop transfer. Left inlet ramp and right inlet ramp, we're going to turn to auto. Those are the ramps at the start of the fuselage. We control the angle of air traveling into the engine. Next, we're going to turn on our yaw, roll, and pitch CAS switches, which is the computer aided controls of the yaw, roll, and pitch. We're going to turn our oxygen on, our left generator and right generator. Ensure our emergency generator is in auto. Turn our left and right engine controls on. Our left and right engine master is on, which is below these switch covers. So that's a left click, right click, left click. We're going to turn our JFS switch on, which is our jet fuel starter. This is like a little APU on the aircraft. It allows us to start the engines with gearbox, mechanical effort. Next, we're going to turn our air conditioner on because we don't want to overheat, of course. We work in a cushy office up there in the clouds. Going to make sure that this is fuel quantity selector is set to tank 1. And now we're ready to start up the JFS. Pull on this handle. We'll release some hydraulic pressure from one of our accumulator bottles and spool up that JFS. We're looking for a green light right here, which we have, which means the JFS is ready to start the engines. But before we start up, we have to test the fire controls. The fire extinguisher switch. So we're going to set that to test, and we should only see a red in this AMAD.
Warning, AMAD, fire. Warning, AMAD, fire.
So our fire detection circuit is working. So let's start up our right engine. To do so, to couple the JFS to the engine, we have to lift the finger lift underneath the throttle of the engine that we wish to start. This will connect the gearbox to that engine and begin the crank. You can hear it in the background. Waiting for this screen to illuminate. Give us some engine information, which we have now. Waiting for 26%, which is as fast as the engine will go without any extra fuel. Before we can add any fuel, we have to test our fire system again.
Warning, AMAD, fire. Warning, AMAD, fire. Warning, engine, fire, left. Warning, engine, fire, left. Warning, engine, fire, right. Warning, engine, fire, right.
And the tapes sound good. So let's add some fuel into that right engine and get it kicked off. To do so, we'll bring that throttle out of the cutoff detent using right control home to bring it up to idle. What we expect to see now is that 26% going all the way up to 72%. And our right generated caution, which is not there yet, should go off according to the checklist. There we go, the engine's pulling up.
low altitude, low altitude.
Cool, so we just have a left generator failure or warning. Our right gen is not there, so we have power in the jet. Let's close the canopy to quiet that noise down to that large engine. It's down, and we lock it in place by pushing that lever all the way forward. Let's start up the left engine. Lift that finger lift on the left, throttle. Connect that gearbox, wait for 26%. There's 26. Bring that throttle up to idle with right alt home. And while we're waiting for that to start up, let's go through the rest of the checklist. So we turn on our UFC by moving this brightness knob here. Turn on our left and right radios by selecting the radio and then hitting this UFC 1. Then we do our second radio, same thing. So now both of our radios are turned on. You can see that they're on because they have the little asterisks and the frequency. Turn on our HUD with this brightness knob here, which is good. You can see everything. We're going to turn on our MPDs and our MPCD. And now we're going to test all of our lights. The light test switch is down here on the right hand panel. You can see the Christmas tree. Everything is turned on. We're not missing any lights anywhere. That's good. Set our terrain following radar to standby. Our radar altitude to on. Our main radar to standby. Our nav flare to standby. Going to set our formation lights and position lights as required. We can turn our conformal fuel tanks back on so that we can use that fuel. Don't forget that. It's a lot of fuel in those tanks. I'm going to set these fuel knobs over here depending on how you're set up. So because I have bags in the aircraft, I'm going to set this to be my external wing tanks. If you didn't have bags, you'd set this to be your conformal tanks. I'm going to set our bingo value at 4,000 because I believe I can get home with 4,000 pounds for today's mission. I'm going to hold our takeoff trim until we hear a warning.
Yaw rate.
Yep.
Yaw
And we're
rate.
going to uncage our standby attitude indicator. Now, because we are starting up a cold and dark aircraft, we need to enter our position into the computer for the INS alignment. To do this, hold right shift and press K to bring up our kneeboard, and will tell us our initial position here that we have to enter into the aircraft. It's also telling us that we have a stored heading, which is good. It means that our INS alignment is going to be much faster. So let's go to the stored heading alignment. If you didn't have a stored heading alignment, you'd go to GC align. Here we can see the numbers. We have 3659769 north, 3524582 east. Good, so we don't even need to enter anything this time around. But if you did, this is how you do it. You would press the shift key here and select either north, east, south or west. So we're going to go with our north first. North. You'll notice that it adds degrees and point and a decimal point here. So make sure that it lines up correctly. You'll see why in a second. Verify correct. Enter that into that line by selecting push button 2. You're going to do the same thing with east. And you'll notice that if I do this, it's incorrect. Because I'd entered the rest of it in and it wouldn't fill out correctly. So we'll start again by pressing clear twice. Shift east 035245882. We enter that into our position east. Now that we've entered that information into the jet, we can look back up here on the HUD to check on our status. And we can see here it says stored heading OK. You'd see GC OK or GC no taxi or GC and a number counting down or SH and a number counting down. If it says no taxi, you can't taxi, but once it's counting down, you can, and you can continue the alignment until you get to the runway. But once we have an OK, we can change our INS knob down here to nav with right clicks to the nav position. And you can see that SHOK has disappeared from the HUD. One other thing we need to check is that our PACS are set up correctly. So we go to Armament, air to ground load, and we confirm our load. So we have a fuel tank, 3 GBU-54s, which are GBU-38s in the computer, that's correct. A GBU-31B in the center, correct. 3 more GBU-54s, so GBU-38s, correct, and fuel, correct. If this is incorrect, we'd step through the pages and find what we needed to load where, or what is loaded where. So for instance, if we had a GBU-12s on board, the laser guided version of these bombs, we'd be able to box that and put it into that slot. The reason we can't do that is because we have smart weapons on board, so they are pre-populating themselves. So that's it for the knee board. We can get rid of the knee board with right shift K. If we want to change our GBU laser codes to deconflict with other flight crew, we can speak to our ground crew using the radio menu, F8, and then go through to F8 again for GBU laser codes. And we want to select all stations, and it'll bring up this little graphic here. And we can select what code we want. So say I wanted 1777, that's how I'd enter that. Now, if you are flying single seat and you don't have a WIZO, there's a few things you need to do and set up in the rear seat. To get to the rear seat, press number 2 on your keyboard above the W, and it'll get you in the back seat. The few things we need to set up, over here on the left panel, we're going to turn our targeting FLIR on to standby. We're going to make sure our laser is safe, unless we want to use it, in which case we'd set it to arm. We're going to turn on our RAW, our ECM pods, our ICS is going to go to auto. Going to come onto the right hand side, turn our ICS here on, RAW on, EWWS on. Going to set our countermeasures dispenser to semi-auto. You can set this to manual or auto, it's your preference. But once you've done these things, your jet is set up in the rear seat. Just remember that if you do want to use your targeting FLIR, you'll have to jump into the back seat and turn it on later. Once you've gone through all these steps, your jet is fully ready to taxi. So let's head over to the runway in the next video.